Across continents and centuries, great civilizations have risen, shaping the world through ingenuity, belief, and beauty, only to fade, vanish, or be swallowed by time. Some left behind towering ruins, others left only whispers in the wind. In this film, we journey through 15 such forgotten worlds. From the temple cities of the Khmer Empire, hidden in Cambodia's jungles, to the mysterious earthen mounds of Cahokia in North America, the enigmatic stone towers of Sardinia's Nurgic people, the grand granite walls of Great Zimbabwe, and the windswept plains of Rapa Nui, where Moai gaze eternally toward the horizon. These stories are not told through maps and timelines, but through memory and mood, through voice, sound, and imagery that bring you closer to the spirit of these places. The visuals you see are artistic interpretations. They exist to create atmosphere, not to provide exact historical reconstructions. You can close your eyes and listen, or let the imagery carry you deeper. This is not just a documentary, it's a dreamlike meditation on human ambition, fragility, and the quiet poetry of civilizations that once were. A soft hush falls over the desert as twilight deepens into night. In the distance, orange and purple hues fade from the horizon, leaving behind a velvet sky dotted with the first timid stars. You find yourself standing at the base of a towering sandstone cliff, high in the mesas of the ancient American Southwest. Nestled in the cliffside above, tucked into natural alcoves, are the homes of the Anasazi, the people now known as the Ancestral Puebloans. Their stone and adobe dwellings cling to the rock face, glowing faintly in the last light of dusk, as if holding on to memories of sunlit days. The air is cool and dry, carrying the gentle scent of sagebrush and pinyon pine. A light breeze whispers through the canyon, rustling juniper branches and stirring a few grains of sand at your feet. As darkness settles, the cliff dwellings become silhouettes against the starry expanse. You tilt your head upward. Above, countless stars emerge, brilliant and clear in the desert's crystal air. The Milky Way unfurls overhead like a gauzy ribbon of light. Here, far from any modern glow, the night sky is as rich and bright as it was 1,000 years ago, when families gathered in these very dwellings and gazed upward in wonder. Close your eyes for a moment. You can almost hear echoes of an ancient evening. The distant hoot of an owl resonates between the canyon walls, a lonely, yet comforting sound. Perhaps long ago, a weary hunter returned home at this hour, climbing a handmade ladder up to his family's shelter in the cliff. Imagine the soft murmur of voices carrying through the cool night air, parents speaking in low tones as children drift to sleep under warm blankets, woven from yucca fiber and cotton. An elder might have whispered a bedtime tale about the patterns of the stars, teaching the young ones how the constellations guide the seasons and the harvest. Lulled by the familiar story and the gentle crackle of a small hearth fire, a child of this bygone world slips into slumber. You step gently through the remains of the settlement, careful and respectful. Smooth sandstone blocks form walls around you, enclosing spaces that once were alive with laughter, work, and family life. In the darkness, you trace your fingers along grooves in the stone. Here is a doorway leading into a communal room. Peering inside, you envision a fire's glow dancing on plastered walls, illuminating painted pottery and bundles of dried corn. Shadows of people move in this imagined light, someone grinding maize with a stone mortar, another mending a sandal, someone else tending the fire. Outside on a ledge, clay pots for water and grain sit quietly, their owners long gone but their presence still felt. A feeling of deep calm envelops this place. The only sounds now are the night breeze and the gentle hush of the desert. In the distance, a coyote howls softly, its cry rising then fading into the vastness. The ancestral Puebloans lived in harmony with this land for centuries, attuned to the rhythm of days and seasons. In the mornings, sunlight would flood this canyon, painting the cliffs gold and warming the stone dwelling. By evening, the world turned peaceful and reflective, with long purple shadows stretching across the canyon floor, just as it is now. Looking upward again, you notice the moon has risen, a slender crescent casting a gentle silver light. The Pueblo ruins take on a dreamlike quality in the moonlight. The forms of the stacked stones and the round kiva, the ceremonial chamber, partly sunken into the earth, are just visible. You imagine a gathering in that kiva on a night like this, Perhaps a small circle of villagers sitting quietly, sharing wisdom and stories. Firelight would dance over their faces as an elder speaks of ancestors and the spirits of the earth. The kiva's roof is open to the sky, so smoke from a sage-scented fire curls up and out, joining the stars. In the stillness of this night, it feels as if those old prayers and stories remain, held in the silence of the rocks and carried on the breeze. Though the Anasazi left these dwellings long ago, the place does not feel empty of life. The presence of those who once lived here is almost palpable, as if the canyon itself remembers them. Their petroglyphs, figures and patterns chipped into the dark desert varnish on nearby rock faces, stand as silent testaments to their days under this sun and sky. You gently run your hand over one carving, feeling the slight indentations where centuries passed. Someone carefully etched a symbol. Perhaps it marked the turning of a season, or recorded an event, or was simply an artist's expression of wonder at the world around them. A sense of mystery and reverence fills you. Why did the ancestral Puebloans eventually leave these homes perched in the cliff? Was it a great drought that made survival difficult? A spiritual calling to journey elsewhere? We may never know for sure. The only answers now come from the stars, the wind, and the stones. In this moment, under a sky unchanged by time, you feel continuity between past and present. The same Polaris glimmers to the north, the very North Star that guided their travels. The same moonlight silvered these cliffs, and the same summer rains once nourished their crops. You sit down on a smooth stone, letting your back rest against a wall that has stood here for a millennia. It's sturdy and cool, offering quiet support. Take a slow, deep breath, and feel the stillness around you seep into your being. Here the passage of time is slow, measured by the crawl of moonlight and the subtle shifting of constellations over. Each breath you draw is gentle and full, as if you are inhaling the tranquility of this canyon and exhaling any lingering worry. The silence isn't empty, it's rich with presence, the essence of those who came before, and the calm of a night that once cradled them as it now cradles you. Far off, the faint swirl of a night breeze passes through the canyon, almost like the whisper of ancient voices saying that all is well, that life flows onward. You listen to that whisper and let it reassure you. Over centuries, seasons of plenty and scarcity balanced each other, and life continued its cycle. Now the homes are quiet and open to the sky, gently reclaimed by nature. Ferns and wild flowers grow where floors once were. Yet continuity remains. Even after people move on, a place holds their memory in echoes, and the people carry a piece of this land with them into new horizons. Above the ridge, a shooting star silently streaks across the night, a brief trail of light that slowly fades into dark. Perhaps an ancestor once looked up at just such a sight, making a wish or sending a prayer. You hold that thought gently, feeling connected across time by the simple act of stargazing in the quiet of night. The hour grows late in this tranquil canyon. A deep peace has settled in the cool air. It's nearly time to leave the Anasazi cliffs and continue our journey, but linger just a moment longer in the serenity. In your mind's eye, see the last ember of an ancient hearth, wink softly, and go out, sending a tiny wisp of smoke into the dark. The families here have long since drifted into their dreams, and now we too must drift onward. The same stars that shine above these silent dwellings will light our way. You stand and take one last look at the moonlit ruins, feeling gratitude for this glimpse of the past, and a gentle anticipation for what comes next. A soft wind rises, picking up a swirl of golden desert dust around your feet. You follow this breeze as it grows steadier. The familiar sage scent fades, giving way to a new aroma on the air, a hint of sweet water and lotus. The wind guides you gently out of the canyon, and across an expanse of space and time. Overhead, the stars shift into subtly new constellations. The dry desert air turns warm and humid against your skin. In your mind's eye, starlight begins to shimmer on water ahead. Gradually, as if drifting from one dream into another, the red rock mesas fade and you find yourself on the banks of a great river in a faraway land. A gentle lap of water against a wooden boat greets your ears. Opening your eyes to this new scene, you find yourself floating on the calm waters of the Nile under a canopy of countless stars. It is a balmy night, the air warm and tinged with the fresh green scent of papyrus reeds along the riverbanks. Above, the sky is a deep indigo. Stars shimmer and reflect on the river's gently rippling surface, as if the heavens have spilled into the water. The moon is higher now, a half moon casting a path of silver across the current. You trail your fingers lightly in the Nile. As you drift, the Rhea is cool and soothing, carrying within it the life of this ancient land. On either side of the Nile, the dark silhouettes of palm trees sway softly in the night breeze. Beyond the palms lies an endless expanse of quiet desert, resting under the starry sky. And rising from that desert, visible even from here on the river, are distant shapes of pyramids. They stand against the horizon, massive and eternal, their triangular sides touched by faint moonlight. Perhaps these are the pyramids of Giza, or perhaps lesser-known ones farther up the Nile. Each was once a monument to a king, and now remains as a symbol of the enduring spirit of ancient Egypt. Their outlines gleam softly, as if still remembering the sun, and their peaks seem to reach toward the stars bridging earth and sky. Your small boat glides downstream, barely disturbing the mirror-like water. In the hush, you hear the gentle splash of a fish now and then, and the distant call of a nightbird hidden among the reeds. From far off, a hint of music drifts on the breeze, perhaps a melodic chant from a temple on the riverbank, where priests keep an all-night vigil with oil lamps and incense. The sound is faint, almost imagined, yet it soothes and reassures, speaking of devotion and continuity. People here too fill the night with prayer and reflection, trusting that the sun will return in the morning. A soft thump nudges your awareness as the boat comes to rest against the shore. Stepping onto the riverbank, your feet press into cool, damp soil. The ground is carpeted with grass and lilies nourished by the Nile's gentle floods. Fireflies flit here and there, tiny lanterns floating in the darkness. As you walk a short distance from the water's edge, your eyes adjust and you see ahead a grand temple complex. Tall stone columns reach up toward the sky, their capitals carved in the shapes of lotus blooms. The walls and pillars are adorned with faintly visible carvings. This is a place of reverence, perhaps dedicated to Amun or Isis, or Hathor, deities beloved in this land. The temple's massive pylons, gateway towers loom silently, and in the stillness you can sense a sacred atmosphere lingering like a delicate perfume. Bronze torch sconces line a processional path leading into the heart of the temple, each flame steady and golden. They cast dancing shadows on the engraved reliefs along the wall. As you pass slowly between the columns, you discern figures etched in stone, pharaohs presenting offerings to gods, and lines of hieroglyphs recounting hymns and victories. You run your hand lightly over the cool stone, feeling the chiseled grooves of those ancient symbols. Though you cannot read them, their presence is reassuring. Prayers and records left behind by devoted hands saying, "We were here, we lived, we sought meaning." In the silence, it's as if the stones themselves are whispering tales of devotion. Moving through a broad courtyard open to the starry night, you come upon a tranquil reflecting pool at the center. The water lies smooth and dark, perfectly mirroring the moon and a sprinkle of stars. Around it, the pillars of the temple stand like guardians. Perhaps ancient priests once walked around this very pool in quiet contemplation. Or maybe a pharaoh gazed into these waters on a night like this, pondering the same constellations that glitter above you now. The air carries a trace of frankincense and myrrh, the sweet, resinous incense of temple rituals. Lingering from the daytime ceremonies, you breathe in that aroma and feel a wave of calm, as ancient and soothing as the scent itself. Beyond the courtyard, the inner sanctum of the temple lies in deep shadow, a place of mystery and solitude. You choose to remain here in the moonlit court, taking a seat on a cool stone bench along the colonnade. From this spot, you can see beyond the temple walls to the open desert. In the far distance across the sand, those pyramids still keep their vigil. One pyramid's apex catches a glint of moonlight. You recall that ages ago, the Great Pyramid was said to be capped with a golden point that shone at dawn's first light. Perhaps even at night it glowed, marking the pharaoh's tomb for the heavens to see. Sitting quietly, you listen to the desert wind outside the temple. It's just a gentle sigh of air, but it makes the palm fronds rustle and brings the faint scent of cooling sand. The desert has its own life at night. Out there, a fennec fox might be prowling, an owl gliding low over the dunes, beetles scuttling across moonlit ground. Here by the Nile, all is nourished and calm. The great river just a short walk behind you continues its eternal journey northward to the sea. The same journey it has made long before human memory and long after. It has seen empires rise on its banks and quietly watched them fall. Yet it flows on, constant and gentle. Gazing up once more, you notice a familiar pattern of stars directly overhead, sparkling down. It is Orion, The hunt. The ancient Egyptians looked upon this constellation as the spirit of Osiris, a god of rebirth. To your eyes, Orion looks the same as when you glimpsed it above the Anasazi cliffs earlier tonight. How comforting, the way the same stars connect different civilizations across time and space. The Egyptians even aligned some of their monuments with the stars, seeking harmony with the cosmos. Lying back on the bench, you soak in the sight of Orion's belt, those 3 stars in a neat row, and remember that people everywhere have found guidance and comfort in these distant lights. The air here is warm and velvety, a contrast to the cool high desert air of the Anasazi home. It wraps around you like a soft shawl. Perhaps in times long past, on nights much like this, families in an Egyptian village also sat outside their mud brick homes, relishing the respite from the day's heat. You imagine a small farming village not far from this temple. Simple houses with oil lamps glowing, children chasing fireflies under date palms, elders telling stories of gods and heroes, just as elders in the Anasazi world told of star beings and spirit. The details differ, but the warmth of community and the wonder at nature's beauty are much the same. Somewhere across the fields, a lullaby might be hummed softly by a mother rocking her child, comparing her baby's slow eyelids to a lotus closing at night on the gentle river. The melody mingles with the chorus of crickets hidden among the reeds, and under that soothing spell, the child drifts to sleep. In time, all households will slumber, trusting that the sun god Ra will sail his boat through the underworld, and rise again at dawn, bringing light and life anew. You return to your small boat, which bobs lightly as you step in. The current carries you onward, and soon the Nile's banks fade from view. A warm raindrop lands on your cheek, then the scent of petrichor rain on dry earth rises as a gentle shower begins to fall, its droplets dimpling the river's surface. It's a soothing warm rain, and after a few moments it passes, leaving the air fresh and thick with humidity. The night is now alive with new sounds, frogs croaking contentedly, insects chirping, and somewhere a nightjar singing. Your boat glides on, no longer on the Nile, but along another great river in a distant land. You find yourself on a floodplain, shimmering from the recent rain. The mighty Indus River flows nearby, its waters full from the monsoon and murmuring softly in the darkness. The raindrops that fell earlier have collected in little rivulets, trickling down earthen lanes and into stone drains along the sides. Clever works of engineering in this ancient city. All around you are neat blocks of buildings made from uniform baked brick. Even in the dim night, the city's orderly layout is evident. Straight streets run before you, intersecting at right angles. This place is one of the thriving cities of the Indus Valley civilization, sometimes called Harappa or Mohenjo-Daro, though what its people called it is unknown to us. What you see around are the outlines of homes and workshops, quiet now under the starry sky. The air is warm and heavy with the perfume of damp earth and night-blooming jasmine. As you wander slowly down a main street, your footsteps create soft splashes in puddles, left by the rain. The city itself is mostly asleep. Behind mud brick walls and wooden doors, families rest on raised platforms or perhaps on their flat rooftops to catch any night breeze. You can imagine them draped in comfortable cotton cloth, cotton that was grown and woven in these lands, for the Indus people were among the first to spin cotton into textiles. A few clay lamps still glimmer in some windows, little pinpoints of flame where someone might be awake tending a late chore or simply enjoying the quiet. But overall, a profound tranquility blankets the city. To your left, set back from the street, you notice a large rectangular pool built of brick and sunk into the earth. This is the famous Great Bath, which may have been used for ritual cleansing or community gatherings. By the light of the moon, the water in the Great Bath lies perfectly still, fed by both rain and well water. Its surface mirrors the night sky. You see a couple of stars reflected, winking gently on the dark water. Kneeling beside the bath, you dip your fingers. The water is cool and pure, carrying a faint earthy scent from the bricks. It's easy to imagine that earlier, when the rains came at dusk, people might have gathered here letting the water refresh them and giving thanks for the monsoon that brings life to their field. You rise and continue exploring at an easy, unhurried pace. Many of the structures around you share the same reddish-brown hue of fired clay brick. Here and there you spot walls coated with a wash of white plaster, perhaps for decoration, or to reflect the sun's heat in daytime. Under an open pavilion, rows of large storage jars are arranged methodically. This could be a granary or storehouse where grain from the harvest is kept safe. The fragrance of wet earth mingles with a subtle sweetness in the air. Following it, you come to a small courtyard garden next to one of the houses. Even at night you can make out broad-leaved plants, and maybe a blossoming lotus in a pot. A low tree stands there, dripping the last of the rain from its leaf. You pause beneath it, listening to the tap of water droplets falling to the ground, a gentle rhythm, like a quiet drumbeat in the darkness. In a small courtyard, a potter's wheel stands still beside a few clay pots left drying in the day's earlier heat. Nearby, a tiny terracotta figurine of a humped bull catches your eye. You pick it up gently. It fits neatly in your palm. Perhaps it was a child's toy, or an offering to a beloved creature or deity. Its surface is smooth, bearing the subtle marks of the artisan's finger. You place it back with a soft smile, imagining the simple joys of daily life in this ancient town. Leaning in through a doorway, you peek into a modest home. Inside, a single oil lamp still burns, its golden light falling over a family sleeping on woven mats, a cat curled at their feet. The lamp casts gentle shadows on the wall, where a few symbols of the Indus script have been painted in white. This ancient writing remains indecipherable to us, a quiet mystery. Perhaps these symbols are blessings for the household, or simply decoration. Not every secret of the past needs to be understood. Some can simply be appreciated, like art, or like a dream that leaves behind a feeling of peace. At the edge of the city, the fields lie silent, breathing a faint mist after the rain. Above, the clouds have begun to part, and a few stars peek through. One star in particular gleams brightly low in the west, likely the planet Venus, the evening star that surely fascinated the people of the Indus as well. A gentle realization comes to you: this civilization, though so ancient and in a far corner of the world, shares common threads with the others you have visited. There is the love of water and respect for the life it brings, the care in building a community, the art and music. We found a flute here and a lyre in Mesopotamia that speak to the soul, and the urge to mark down symbols and story. The human spirit, it seems, has always sought to build, to create, to find meaning, whether in a cliff dwelling, along the Nile, or here by the Indus River. A low rumble of thunder grumbles again on the far horizon, softer and more distant than before. It might be the departing monsoon cloud, or another storm still many miles away. For now, the sky above you is mostly clear, with only a few wisps of cloud illuminated by moonlight. The storm's passing has left everything cleansed and renewed. Tiny droplets on the leaves glint whenever starlight catches them, like little stars brought to earth. A cool breeze picks up, carrying the fresh scents of jasmine and wet soil, and gently swirling them around you, almost as if the night itself is embracing you. It is time now to take our leave of this peaceful city. Before you depart, you cast one more loving glance over the sleeping town, the flat rooftops where families dream in the open air, the quiet great bath glinting faintly, and the straight roads stretching into darkness. All is at rest. Following the breeze, you walk back toward the riverbank. Each step carries you a bit farther from the city, and as you look back, the outlines of buildings grow dim. The night breeze carries a new hint of fragrance now, spices on the air, or perhaps a whiff of incense mingled with the faint saltiness of a distant sea. The gentle murmur of the Indus River accompanies you. A small boat waits at the water's edge, bobbing soft. You step in, and the current eagerly takes hold, guiding you downstream. Above, the stars rearrange themselves once more. You watch as familiar points of light slide across the sky, guiding your way westward. The warm, humid air gradually turns drier and cooler again. A slim crescent moon peeks out from behind a cloud and casts a shimmering trail on the water's surface. The Indus has carried you to the sea, and now your boat rocks on gentle ocean swells. The fragrance of night jasmine and river reeds fades, replaced by a clean open breeze with a hint of salt. Under the vast dome of the sky, constellations both old and new twinkle overhead. The boat sails on across calm waters, each soft wave carrying you further through time. You catch a distant glimmer on the horizon, the meeting of two great rivers with the sea. Stepping ashore, you set foot on rich, dark soil. Before you lies a wide plain under the night. The air here smells of fertile earth and ripe grain. In the far distance, flickering like a low star, a torchlight beckons from atop a tall terraced structure. You find yourself under a broad, tranquil night sky on the Mesopotamian plains. This is the cradle of civilization between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. As you walk away from the gentle lap of the Gulf waters at the delta, you feel the soil firm under your feet. It's dark, but the landscape is open and vast, with only a few low hills silhouetted against the horizon. Through the dim starlight, you can make out the outline of an ancient city ahead. Its most prominent feature is a ziggurat, a towering, stepped platform rising toward the heavens, with a small shrine at its summit. From that shrine glows a warm golden light, likely from torches or oil lamps kept burning as offerings to the gods of this land. The night air here is dry and still, cooler than the day's heat, which can be intense in these parts. A mild breeze wafts over the plain, bringing with it the mingled fragrances of a Mesopotamian night, the sweetness of ripe dates from a nearby palm grove, the earthy smell of sun-baked mud bricks cooling in the dark, and a faint trace of incense, perhaps cedar or myrrh, drifting from the temple on the ziggurat. In the distance you can hear water flowing in irrigation canals, a soft trickling that speaks of the ingenuity of people who tamed these rivers to water their crops and sustain their cities. Approaching the city walls, you see they are built of countless mud bricks, their surface smoothed by time. An arched gate stands open, and no sentries bar your way. The night is peaceful, and the city slumbers. You step through and enter a narrow street between rows of mud brick houses. Most inhabitants are asleep at this late hour, behind wooden doors or perhaps on their flat rooftops under the open sky. Indeed, as you glance upward, you notice a few families sleeping on their roofs, curled on mats, enjoying the night's respite from the day's heat. A solitary figure here and there sits up, maybe lost in thought or keeping watch over a sick child, but they pay you no heed. The atmosphere is safe and drowsy. Mesopotamia saw humanity's first cities, places like Uruk, Ur and Babylon. Perhaps this city is one of those, or one much like them. As you wander its lanes, you pass by a wall with faint markings in it. By the light of the moon you can make out wedge-shaped impressions in clay. It's cuneiform, the script of this land. You pause to gently touch the markings, hardened now for millennia. It could be a tally of grain, or a hymn to a goddess, or perhaps part of an ancient story. The marks are mysterious yet orderly, each wedge a tiny record of a thought. Just as you traced hieroglyphs in Egypt, here you trace cuneiform, and feel a connection to the scribe who pressed these symbols, recording their world. Their worries and hopes may have been different, but under the same sky, not so unlike those of people today. The street widens into an open square, a marketplace by day, now silent and empty beneath the stars. You pause in the middle of the plaza, imagining the scene in sunlight, vendors calling out prices of dates and barley, the bray of donkeys laden with goods, children darting between stalls, scribes perched on stools jotting transactions on clay tablets. In the center stands a simple stone fountain, fed by a canal. Even now it provides a trickle of water, a precious gift in this climate. The sound of the water flowing into the basin is a soft whisper in the silence, soothing and constant. Nearby, a cluster of date palms casts a gentle shadow. You wander toward them and find a small stone bench beneath their fronds. Sitting down, you relish the slight rustle whenever the night breeze stirs the palm leaves, a calming, rain-like patter. From here you have a clear view of the ziggurat at the city's hub. Its tiered terraces catch the moonlight, and at each corner of each level, a torch flame flickers like a tiny beacon. Up on the top platform, you glimpse a lone robed figure pacing slowly. It could be a priest of the moon god, keeping vigil over the sleeping city and the silent star. The people of Mesopotamia were keen observers of the heavens. They named constellations, tracked planets like Venus, and recorded eclipses on clay tablets. Perhaps that figure on the ziggurat is watching the moon's journey, or simply offering a quiet prayer on behalf of everyone slumbering below. In the silence, a gentle music floats from a nearby dwelling, a few soft notes plucked on a lyre or harp. The melody is slow and contemplative, maybe an ancient lullaby drifting through the night. The notes wrap around you like a warm blanket, inviting you to relax further. In your mind, you can almost supply words to the tune, perhaps a song about these two rivers as kindly guardians, about fields of grain and orchards of dates, about stars above as the eyes of benevolent God. Whether those were the true lyrics or not, the sentiment feels right for this place, known as the cradle of civilization, where people first learned to live together in cities. and care for the cycles of nature. After a time you continue on, drawn toward the great ziggurat itself. At its broad base, you stop and gaze up its steep steps. The bricks beneath your feet are large and flat, still faintly warm from the heat they gathered under the previous sun. You ascend a few of the monumental steps, each almost knee-high, and pause partway up to take in the view. Even from here the city unfurls around you in the starlight. Most of it lies in darkness, but here and there a lamp glows in a window or at a street corner, forming little islands of gold in a sea of blue-black. The layout of streets forms a faint grid, and beyond the last house, you can trace the shimmering lines of canals and the reflective ribbons of the two great rivers. They catch just enough starlight to glint as they wind through the landscape. The sight is enchanting, like a map of shining veins, carrying life through the dark body of the land. From this gentle height you also notice the greater world beyond the city. To the east, one river, the Tigris, flows swift and narrow. To the west, the broader Euphrates coils more lazily. Both are quiet at this hour, their waters occasionally giving a soft gurgle or splash. The fertile land between them spreads out, dark and velvety under the night, dotted with a few distant lights from farmsteads, or perhaps traveling boats with lanterns. On the far horizon, a silent flash of lighting illuminates the edges of some clouds, just for a heartbeat, then fades, leaving the stars undisturbed. All is calm here in the cradle of civilization. You sit down on a step to savor this vantage point. Leaning against the solid bricks, you feel their texture against your back, ancient and reassuring. These very bricks have outlasted kings and empires. Perhaps worshippers once climbed here with offerings and prayers, and their footsteps echoed where you now sit. Now the ziggurat simply offers a resting place for a traveler, in a peaceful night. In the sky above, the half-moon casts a gentle glow over the fields and rivers, a comforting lantern in the darkness. Its cool light invites reflection, different from the sun's glare, gentler and more forgiving. You feel that comfort deeply. Moonlight such as this must have guided travelers and guarded farmers at night since time immemorial, and tonight it gently illuminates your path as well. From a nearby alley, the warm scent of fresh bread wafts by. Perhaps a baker has indeed risen early, kneading dough for the morning's meal. The smell is so familiar and inviting, it transcends time. It reminds you that in all these civilizations, people have always attended to the simple, essential things: baking bread, carrying water, caring for their family. In that way, none of these cultures is ever truly lost. They live on in the daily rituals we continue, connecting us across the ages. The thought brings a smile to your face, as if on cue your eyes drift back to the star. One star in particular pulses gently above the horizon like a beacon calling you onward. You take it as a sign that your journey should continue. Rising from the step, you feel gratitude for the profound stillness and wisdom of Mesopotamia's night. With a soft, respectful pat on the ancient brick, you silently thank this land, the foundation of so much that came after, for sharing its peace with you. You descend and quietly leave the city the way you entered, passing under the grand arch of the gate. Outside in the palm grove by the Euphrates, your small boat waits where you left it, bobbing softly in the slow current. You climb in and pick up the wooden oars. With gentle strokes you row out onto the broad river. The oars dip into the dark water with barely a sound. The current joins in to carry you downriver. As you glide away, the silhouette of the ziggurat and the few dim lights of the city shrink, until they blend into the darkness behind you. Soon all that remains is the vast bowl of the sky above, and the shining ribbon of the river below, guiding you onward. The river's current quickens slightly, pulling you toward the open sea. A soft mist forms on the water as the cooler night air meets warm river, wrapping you in a dreamy haze. Through this mist, the familiar stars overhead begin to shift into new arrangements. The air grows warmer and more humid, carrying a rich earthy sweetness and a hint of wood smoke. The gentle splash of the oars fades, replaced by a different rhythm, a distant drumming, slow and steady like a heartbeat, joined by the chorus of tropical insects chirping in the dark. The mist gradually clears and you realize your boat is now gliding beneath the dense green canopy of a rainforest. The jungle air wraps around you like a warm blanket, rich with the scents of wet foliage and fertile earth. Night in the Maya lands is alive with a subtle symphony, the steady trill of cicadas, the occasional croak of tree frogs, and the far-off hoot of an owl echoing through the trees. Overhead, the sky peeks through the leaves in patches, revealing bright tropical stars. The Milky Way arcs overhead like a pale river of light, a shimmering band that the Maya may have seen as a road for the gods. Your simple wooden canoe, now a sturdy dugout carved from a ceiba tree, glides to a stop against a soft bank of moss and pebbles along a slow-moving jungle river. Stepping onto solid ground, you find the earth soft underfoot, with layers of fallen leaves. The air is thick and humid, filled with the green smell of plants and the faint sweetness of orchids blooming unseen in the dark. Fireflies drift about in the undergrowth, blinking on and off like tiny stars that have come down to dance among the ferns. You walk forward along a narrow path that winds through broad-leaved plants and hanging vines. Giant trees tower above ceiba trees, sacred to the Maya, their trunks disappearing into darkness overhead. The night is warm and alive. Somewhere above, a gentle breeze high in the canopy makes leaves whisper, almost like distant ocean waves. Closer by, you hear the soft drip of moisture from leaves and the occasional flapping of a fruit bat on its nocturnal rounds. As you push aside a curtain of vines, a sight both eerie and awe-inspiring greets you. The moonlit silhouette of a great stone pyramid rising out of the jungle. Its limestone steps and terraces climb sharply upward, and at the very top sits a small temple structure. This could be a pyramid of Tikal, deep in the Guatemalan rainforest, or perhaps one of the temples of Palenque or Chichen Itza. For now, it is simply an ancient Maya temple breathing quietly under the night sky. Stepping into the clearing at the pyramid's base, the full majesty of an ancient Maya city reveals itself. Around you are other structures, smaller step pyramids, wide plazas, stone stelae, tall slabs carved with intricate glyphs, and remnants of palaces, many partially reclaimed by the jungle. Tree roots weave over and through the stones, and climbing plants drape the structures. Yet the forest has been gentle here. It cloaks the city in green, but hasn't utterly consumed it. Insects chirp from within roofless chambers, where once nobility might have slept. A night bird coos softly from a perch on a carved stone pillar. Despite the overgrowth, there's a palpable respect in how the jungle holds these ruins, as if nature knows it cradles a sacred place and has wrapped it softly in verdant arms, allowing the stones to still speak. You approach a nearby stela, a tall stone monument, half embraced by roots, running your fingers over its damp surface. You feel the shapes of Maya glyphs carved into it. Though you can't read them, you sense they carry meaning, perhaps dates and names of kings long gone, records of ceremonies, or prophecies of celestial events. The Maya were masters of time and astronomy. The very layout of this city reflects that knowledge. Some temples are aligned to capture the first rays of the solstice sunrise, and certain structures frame the rise of Venus, the brilliant evening star that held great meaning for the Maya. As you trace the graceful curves and lines of the glyphs, you imagine the ancient scribes who chiseled them, encoding their calendar and history into stone. The carvings seem to hum with that old knowledge, even in silence. Feeling drawn to see more, you begin to ascend the main pyramid staircase. Each step is tall, and you climb carefully, one deliberate foot after another. The stones are worn in the middle from long ago use, and small tufts of grass have taken root in crevices. About halfway up, you pause on a terrace to catch your breath and gaze around. The view is breathtaking. The dark canopy of the rainforest stretches out like an endless sea, with only a few other temple tops poking through like islands. The moonlight bathes everything in silver. Down below, the plaza you came from lies in shadow, but you can imagine it as it once was, perhaps torches burning around its perimeter, the murmur of a gathering of people, the sound of a conch shell echoing to announce the start of a midnight ceremony. High above in the sky, the stars shine with an intensity you haven't seen elsewhere. They even seem to flicker in subtle colors. Among them you spy a singular bright object with a steady light. This must be Venus, the evening star hovering low in the west. The sight of it gives you a sense of profound mystery, mixed with familiarity. In your journey tonight you have traveled far in space and time, yet here, thousands of miles and many centuries from where you began, something resonates with all the places that came before. The hush atop this Maya pyramid feels akin to the hush in the Anasazi Canyon, the stillness by the Egyptian Nile, the quiet in the Indus streets, and the calm on the Mesopotamian plain. In each land, people looked up at this same sky, found beauty and meaning, and built great work. In each land, night came as a gentle caretaker, offering a time for rest and reflection, just as it does for you now. Finally, feeling serene, you reach the top platform of the pyramid. The small temple at the summit is open to the night. Its doorway frames a portion of the starry sky, and inside an altar stone sits quietly, empty of offerings now. You step to the edge of the pyramid's flat top, and lie down on the smooth stone, looking up at the heaven. The stone is still warm from the heat of the day, and it soothes your back comfortably. A soft breeze brushes over, gentle and warm, carrying the faint scent of orchids and the jungle below. You cradle your head in your hands and gaze straight up. There is the North Star again, glinting just above the tree line. You recognize a few other star patterns that have become like old friends throughout this journey. The sky truly has been a companion at every step, always present, always familiar, yet showing a different face in each place. Your eyes grow heavy now in the best possible way. As you begin to close them, you still catch the glow of 1,000 distant suns above, and the black outlines of treetops around. The jungle's lullaby continues, the rhythmic drones of insects, the occasional gurgle of a night bird, the far-off howl of a monkey echoing like a distant wind. The slow drumbeat you heard earlier has subsided, or perhaps it was only your own heartbeat, and all that remains is this natural chorus, steady and calming. In this deeply relaxed state, your mind drifts. You gently recall each of the 5 civilizations you visited tonight. Each one offered a gift. The Anasazi gave you the gift of silence and starlight in the high desert, teaching that stillness itself is full of meaning. Egypt gave you the gift of the eternal Nile, showing how time flows and renews life. The Indus Valley offered the gift of gentle order and mystery, reminding you that peace and curiosity can coexist. Mesopotamia shared the gift of knowledge and story, from the first written words to the enduring stories that connect. And here the Maya offer the gift of cosmic perspective, their pyramids reaching to the stars and their calendar spanning great cycles, reminding you that you are part of something much larger, a grand design unfolding in its own time. You feel a deep sense of gratitude, and in your heart you thank the spirits of those ancient peoples for welcoming you. In the stillness, it seems as though they offer a gentle blessing in return, a wish for peace, wisdom and understanding. Now it is time to return fully to your own place and time, carrying these blessings with you. Gently, as if carried on a soft cloud, you drift away from the Maya temple top. The scene below blurs, the silver ruins and dark jungle melding into a haze of memory. You feel weightless, floating slowly down through warm night air. You become aware of your own breathing, slow, steady and soft. The surface beneath you now is familiar and comfortable. You are back in the present, yet the calm of those ancient nights remains wrapped around you like a gentle cloak. As you lie here ready to surrender to sleep, imagine the same vast sky overhead connecting you to all times and places. The stars twinkle with friendly light, watching over you as they watched over the ancestors. The earth beneath you is solid and enduring, as old as the cliffs, pyramids, and temples that still stand in far-off lands. You are safe, cradled by the earth, and watched by the stars above. Your eyes are closed now. Any last wandering thoughts float by like passing clouds, and you let them go. Your body feels heavy and relaxed, sinking softly into your bed. A final gentle sigh of a breeze moves through your mind, extinguishing the last tiny flickers of wakefulness. In this peaceful state, you drift towards sleep. The journey is over, and you carry no burdens from it, only a light, curious joy at the richness of human history and the comforting truth that we all share the same night sky. All is well. The ancient voices have whispered their lullabies, and now they too fall silent, watching kindly as you slip into a deep, restful slumber. Sleep now, dear traveler, under the same ageless sky that connects us all. Sleep, and let the dreams of lost civilizations gently guide you to a land of deep healing rest. Anatolia, modern Turkey, in the late Bronze Age, was dominated by a formidable empire whose name was lost to history until modern archaeology rediscovered it, the Hittite Empire. These people, speakers of an Indo-European tongue, built a powerful military state and vied with New Kingdom Egypt and Assyria for supremacy. At their height, around the 14th-13th centuries BCE, the Hittites ruled most of Anatolia and northern Syria, their kings styling themselves Great King alongside pharaohs and Babylonian monarchs. Their capital city, Hattusa, lies in ruins amid Turkey oaks and steppe grass today, a remote UNESCO site at Boğazköy, Turkey. Wandering through Hattusa's remains, you can still pass through the Lion Gate, where carved stone lions have guarded an entryway for over 3,200 years. Beyond, the foundations of palaces and temples sprawl over the hills, and great earthen ramparts once fortified the city. It was here that the earliest known peace treaty in the world was signed, between the Hittites and Egyptians after the famous Battle of Kadesh, circa 1274 BCE. The Hittites were innovators. They mastered ironworking earlier than most. The word Hittite even became associated with iron in later legends, and their chariots thundered across the plains of Anatolia. They left behind thousands of baked clay tablets in cuneiform script, preserving royal decrees, myths, and diplomatic letters. From these tablets we know of King Shepululyuma I, who conquered the Mitanni and rattled the Egyptians, and of Muwatalli II, who faced Rameses II at Kadesh. The Hittite state was robust, fortified by a pantheon of storm gods and sun goddesses whom they worshipped in rock-cut shrines like Yazilikaya, and by a tradition of pragmatic governance that integrated various peoples of Anatolia. Yet around 1200 BCE, the Hittite Empire met a sudden and catastrophic end. Hattusa, the great capital, was abandoned and partially burned around this time. Lesser cities across the Hittite realm showed destruction layers or were deserted. The royal archives fall silent. No more cuneiform tablets after a certain point, as if the scribes laid down their style forever. The collapse was part of a larger convulsion that struck the eastern Mediterranean at the end of the Bronze Age. We'll hear more of that soon. But for the Hittites, it meant the complete disappearance of their empire, and even their language for millennia. Later inhabitants of Anatolia, and even the ancient Hebrews, who mention Hittites in the Bible, retained only faint echoes of this once great civilization, not realizing the true scope of what had been. Why did the Hittite Empire fall so quickly? Historians piece together a story of multiple stresses, a perfect storm of calamities. Firstly, climate change played a role. Recent scientific evidence, such as tree ring and pollen analyses, suggests that Anatolia experienced a severe drought in the late 13th century BCE. Crop failures and famine likely ensued, undermining the Hittite economy and the populace's loyalty. One inscription from the reign of the last known Hittite king, Shepululyuma II, records pleas for grain from distant lands, indicating hunger at home. Secondly, external pressures mounted. Mysterious groups known as the Sea Peoples, seaborne raiders and migrants, were attacking cities throughout the Mediterranean around that time. More on them soon, and could have cut off trade or directly assaulted Hittite territories. In the Hittite provinces, vassal states may have sensed weakness and rebelled. Enemies on the empire's fringes, like the Kaska tribes from the north, whom the Hittites had never fully subdued, might have taken advantage of the chaos to sack Hattusa itself. Some archaeological levels at Hattusa show signs of violent destruction, though intriguingly, it appears the royal palace may have been deliberately cleared out, and the city partly evacuated before the final burning. Perhaps the last king fled, taking the treasury and as many people as he could before invaders or desperate locals set the city aflame. Within a few years, the Hittite political structure disintegrated. While some descendants of the Hittites survived in small Neo-Hittite city-states in Syria, like Carchemish, for a few centuries more, the empire's heartland in Anatolia fell into a dark age. Writing vanished. Indeed, the very use of the Hittite cuneiform script disappeared completely. The grand temples fell to ruin, and the knowledge of the Hittite language, history, and gods was forgotten. For over 3,000 years, the Hittites were essentially unknown to the world, until archaeologists in the early 20th century excavated Hattusa and deciphered those clay tablets, resurrecting their story. It's humbling to stand amid the tumbled cyclopean stones at Hattusa's great temple courtyard, where once the storm god of Hatti was honored with lavish offerings. Now weeds push through the paving stones, and only the whisper of the Anatolian wind and the cry of an eagle break the silence. The land of 1,000 gods, as the Hittites called their realm, is today a land of ghostly memories. One can place a hand on the ancient stone lions at the gate and feel the coolness of the past, imagining the bustle of merchants and soldiers that once passed between these guardians. The abrupt end of the Hittites is a poignant reminder of how even a dominant empire, with kings and scribes and treaties, can swiftly crumble into oblivion, leaving behind only enigmatic clay tablets and weathered walls. Yet their legacy lives on in unexpected ways. The very peace treaty they signed with Egypt in 12159 BCE is often cited as the oldest in history, and their legal and political ideas trickle down to successor cultures. As night falls at Hattusa, you might envision the glow of torches from long ago, and hear in your drowsy mind a Hittite lullaby, or the distant echo of bronze shields clashing. But those echoes fade, and the stars above, the same stars the Hittites charted, now shine down on an empire turned to dust. The Hittites' tale was one of fiery collapse, where climate and invasions brought an empire low. Now we cross continents and leap forward in time to witness another grand kingdom's decline, one not by sudden catastrophe, but by a slow waning under changing skies and fortunes. We travel to the highlands of East Africa, where the kingdom of Aksum once stood as a beacon of trade and faith. In the rugged highlands of northern Ethiopia, where the air is crisp and the hillsides are dotted with ancient terraced fields, lie the remnants of a once great African empire, Aksum, or Aksum. The kingdom of Aksum was a trading powerhouse that thrived from roughly the 1st century AD into the 7th century AD, commanding the crossroads of commerce between Africa, Arabia, and the Greco-Roman world. The Aksumites left behind dramatic monuments that still awe visitors and locals alike, enormous carved obelisks, known as stelae, that tower into the sky. These stelae, some over 20 meters tall and weighing hundreds of tons, were erected without mortar or modern machinery, likely to mark the tombs of Aksum's kings. Walking in the Aksum stelae field feels like standing among giant stone fingers reaching for the heavens. One fallen giant, the Great Stelae, would have stood over 30 meters high had it not cracked and toppled in antiquity. Another, a 24-meter stelae, was looted to Italy in the 20th century and returned in 2005, re-erected to once again pierce the Ethiopian sky. These monuments bespeak a civilization of great engineering skill and deep spiritual or funerary customs. At its zenith, around the 4th–6th centuries AD, Aksum was considered by some contemporary scholars to be one of the world's 4 great powers alongside Rome or Byzantium, Persia, and China. The city of Aksum itself, near today's Aksum town in Tigray, Ethiopia, may have housed 20,000 or more people, making it one of the largest cities in sub-Saharan Africa of its time. Its markets bustled with traders dealing in gold and ivory, Aksum's 2 most lucrative exports. From the African interior came ivory, rhinoceros horn, tortoise shell, and gold nuggets, which Aksumite merchants would trade to the Red Sea ports, like Adulis on the Eritrean coast. In return, they received spices from India, silk from China, glassware and wine from the Mediterranean. Aksum even minted its own currency, one of the few ancient African states to do so, striking gold, silver, and bronze coins bearing the profile of its kings. These coins, some inscribed with the title King of Kings in Greek, have been found as far away as India, attesting to Aksum's far-flung connections. A defining moment in Aksum's history was its conversion to Christianity. In the mid-4th century, around 3027 AD, King Ezana of Aksum embraced Christianity, making Aksum one of the earliest official Christian kingdoms in the world. To this day, Ethiopia's church traces its roots to this event. Ezana's stele, a stone slab inscription, even records his victories and his new faith. The symbol of the cross replaced the disc and crescent on Aksum's coins after conversion. The ruins of 4th century churches and the continuation of Christian tradition in the region speak to the lasting impact of this change. One can imagine the royal court at Aksum, the king and nobles listening to scriptures, perhaps brought by Syrian missionaries like Frumentius, under the bright African sun, as they decided to forsake old gods for the new faith. Aksum reached a peak of influence by the 6th century. Its navy and armies were strong enough to intervene across the Red Sea. Aksumite kings conquered parts of Yemen, including the Himyarite kingdom, around 525 AD, establishing a presence in southern Arabia. The empire was truly transcontinental for a brief time. However, it is here that the seeds of decline began to take root. In the later 6th century, Persian forces, the Sasanian Empire, pushed Aksum out of Yemen. The loss of South Arabian territories was a blow to prestige and perhaps to trade revenues. More critically, the rise of Islam in the 7th century dramatically altered regional dynamics. Islamic caliphates rapidly took control of Egypt, the Levant, and Arabia, the very trade network Aksum depended on. Suddenly, Aksum found itself somewhat isolated, cut off from its trading partners by the new Islamic Empire, which preferred its own emerging trade routes. Environmental factors also played a major role in Aksum's decline. The Aksumites had prospered in part due to the fertile highlands and stable climate of their region. But evidence suggests that by the 6th-7th centuries, the environment was under strain. Pollen data and other studies indicate overuse of land. Perhaps too many forests were cleared for agriculture or fuel, leading to soil erosion. Climate shifts may have brought more irregular rainfall or even droughts, straining the agricultural base. As harvests waned, supporting a large urban population became harder. We also hear of the movement of the Beja people, nomadic herders, who encroached on Aksum's territory from the north around this time. Their migration and grazing may have further disrupted Aksum's control of outlying areas and trade routes. By the mid-7th century, Aksum's golden age was ending. The capital city, Aksum, saw a decline. Monumental buildings ceased. Sometime after 630 AD, and possibly by 8th century, the political center of the kingdom shifted. Later Ethiopian chronicles suggest a move of the capital into the mountains, to places like Kuba, or eventually to Lalibela, under the Agao-Azagwe dynasty. In essence, the old urban center was largely abandoned. The once bustling royal compounds fell quiet, and many of the mighty stelae toppled or were deliberately pulled down, perhaps during later turmoil or in an effort to erase the old royal tombs. By 800 AD, Aksum as a significant power was a memory. The kingdom fragmented into smaller entities. The torch of Ethiopian civilization would later be carried by new dynasties and kingdoms, but Aksum's prominence was gone. Yet, Aksum was not forgotten locally. The Church of St. Mary of Zion in Aksum, in later rebuilt form, continued as a spiritual heart of Ethiopian Christianity, and legends like that of the Ark of the Covenant being kept at Aksum persisted. When you visit Aksum today, you can still see rough stone foundations of palaces like the suspected ruins of King Caleb's palace, carved thrones, and tall stelae casting long shadows at dawn. Some stelae stand perfectly upright, others lie in massive broken pieces on the ground, covered in lichen. The site has an atmosphere of serene abandonment. Villagers lead goats through the field, and children play among the fallen stones that once commemorated kings. The decline of Aksum was gradual, a twilight rather than an explosion. It reminds us that civilizations can fade away, not only through violence, but through slow shifts of climate, trade, and culture. In the quiet hours of early night, one might picture Aksum in its prime, torchlights flickering on the faces of tall obelisks, priests chanting in gaze, diplomats from distant lands arriving with exotic gifts. Then imagine that light slowly dimming, year by year, until only moonlight bathes the great stones. The empire of Aksum became a ghost, but its spirit endures in Ethiopia's cultural memory and in the monuments left behind, enduring stone testaments to a chapter of African history that once shone brightly, and then, inevitably, passed into shadow. We now leave the Ethiopian highlands and travel back in time and over sea to the dawn of European civilization. In the blue waters of the Aegean, the island of Crete holds secrets of a people whose vibrant culture fell prey to natural catastrophe and foreign invasion. We turn to the Minoans of Crete, a civilization of art and myth that collapsed amidst fire and ash. On the island of Crete, More than 3,500 years ago, a sophisticated civilization flourished that we now call the Minoans, after the mythical King Minos. The Minoans are often regarded as Europe's first advanced civilization, and their society, 2000 to 1450 BCE, was marked by beautiful art, monumental architecture, and extensive trade networks. The Minoans built sprawling palace complexes at places like Knossos, Phaistos, Malea, and Zakros. These palaces weren't quite like the fortified castles of later ages. Instead, they were open, labyrinthine complexes of halls, courtyards, and storerooms, more ceremonial and administrative centers than military strongholds. The most famous is Knossos, near modern Heraklion. According to legend, Knossos was the seat of King Minos, and home to the labyrinth that imprisoned the half-man, half-bull Minotaur. Wandering the site of Knossos today, one can see why the myth of a labyrinth arose. The layout is a maze of chambers and corridors. Sir Arthur Evans, the archaeologist who excavated Knossos in the early 1900s, even named the culture Minoan, after the Minos of legend. The Minoans are remembered for their art, vibrant frescoes that adorned palace walls, depicting scenes of nature, ritual, and daily life. In these frescoes we see graceful figures in colorful skirts and kilts, with narrow waists and confident poses. One famous image shows youths engaging in bull leaping, a sport or ritual where participants would grab a charging bull by the horns and flip over its back. This startling portrayal captures both the athleticism and perhaps religious significance of bulls in Minoan culture. Indeed, the bull and the labrys double-headed axe were important symbols, possibly connected to worship. The Minoans also crafted elegant pottery, such as the marine-style vases painted with octopuses. An example is the octopus vase from Palais Castro, and delicate gold jewelry. Unlike the contemporary civilizations of Egypt or Mesopotamia, the Minoans left behind no grand carved victory stelae or kingly statues. Much of what we infer about them comes from their art and the ruins of their architecture. One of the enduring mysteries of the Minoans is their undeciphered script, known as Linear A. They used this script to record economic transactions on clay tablets, but despite decades of effort, modern scholars have not cracked the code. It likely encodes a language unrelated to later Greek. So, like the Indus script, Linear A remains an eloquent silence. The Minoans' own words are locked away, and we cannot hear their voices directly. For hundreds of years, the Minoans dominated the Aegean. They established trade outposts or contacts as far afield as the Cycladic Islands, Cyprus, the Levant, and Egypt. Minoan artifacts, especially their pottery, are found throughout the eastern Mediterranean, showing that they were consummate seafarers, spreading their goods and perhaps cultural influence widely. The Greeks of later eras remembered Crete in their myths as a land of skill and cunning, home not only to King Minos, but also Daedalus, the legendary craftsman who built the labyrinth, and Icarus, and a place visited by gods like Zeus in the guise of a bull. Then, sometime around 1450 BCE, the Minoan civilization suffered a devastating blow. Archaeology reveals that around that date, most of the Minoan palaces, except Knossos, were destroyed or abandoned, often with signs of violent destruction and fire. The Grand Palace of Knossos itself, which survived that initial wave, ultimately fell and was abandoned a couple of generations later, by around 1375 BCE, ending the Minoan era for good. What happened? The fall of the Minoans appears to have been a combination of natural disaster and human conquest. A few centuries earlier, around 1600 BCE, the Minoans endured one of the greatest natural cataclysms in ancient history, the eruption of Thera, the volcano on the island, now known as Santorini. This eruption was colossal, rated 7 on the Volcanic Explosivity Index, ejecting an immense plume of ash and likely causing tsunamis that pummeled the coasts of Crete. The thriving Minoan town of Akrotiri, on Thera, was completely buried in pumice and ash, preserved like a Bronze Age Pompeii. Strikingly, on Crete, none of the main palaces show ash from Thera, indicating they were out of the direct fallout zone, and for a time after the eruption, the Minoans continued on, even undertaking new building projects. However, the indirect effects of the eruption, possible climate cooling, disrupted trade, coastal damage from tsunamis, might have weakened Minoan society over the ensuing decades. Ultimately, about 50 years after Thera's eruption, the palaces were destroyed in a wave of violence. Many scholars believe that this was the result of Mycenaean Greeks from mainland Greece invading Crete. At sites like Knossos, archaeologists noticed something intriguing. The palace at Knossos was damaged around 1450 BCE, but then reoccupied and some parts rebuilt, now with artifacts showing a mix of Minoan and Mycenaean characteristics. The administrative tablets in Linear A give way to tablets in Linear B, a script used by Mycenaeans, which we can read. It encodes an early form of Greek. The Linear B tablets from Knossos speak of Greek gods and record inventories in Greek language, suggesting that after the destruction, the palace was used by Greek-speaking rulers. Essentially, Mycenaeans took over Knossos and perhaps ruled as a new elite for several decades. Whether this invasion was a swift military conquest or a more gradual infiltration of power is debated, but the end result was that native Minoan culture was supplanted. By 1300 BCE, Crete was essentially a Mycenaean province, and the unique features of Minoan civilization faded into the Pan-Aegean Bronze Age culture of the time. As a result of these events, the Minoans pass almost into legend. By the time classical Greeks wrote their histories, the memory of a great Cretan civilization survived only in mythic garb: the labyrinth, the Minotaur, the tales of King Minos' naval empire. For centuries, the ruins on Crete were unexplained, and it wasn't until Arthur Evans's excavations in the early 20th century that the Minoans resurfaced from myth into historical reality. Today, as you walk through the reconstructed areas of Knossos, past the red columns and frescoed throne, partially restored by Evans's imagination, you can almost see the vibrant life that once filled these spaces. Priests or priestesses in flowing dresses performing rituals in the central court, acrobats leaping over bulls, artisans carving seal stones, merchants arriving with goods from foreign lands. Then imagine the turmoil of the collapse. Perhaps earthquakes. Crete is seismically active, rattling the island, fires breaking out in storerooms, or perhaps foreign warriors advancing through palace gates, swords drawn. The end, when it came, left the palaces in charred disarray. In some places, valuable objects were left behind, never reclaimed, suggesting the population fled or was displaced. What followed was a true dark age for Crete, as it fell under Mycenaean control, and then, around 1200 BCE, the Mycenaeans themselves fell, a story we are about to tell. The lights went out on the grandeur of the Bronze Age in the Aegean. In the quiet of a Cretan night, it's possible to feel the ghosts of the Minoans. The Aegean breeze blows gently over the ruins, carrying the salt scent of the sea. The same moon that once shone on Minoan festivities now casts a silvery light on broken columns. There's a poignancy in how completely their world vanished, even their language lost, their stories untold. Yet their artistry and achievements whisper to us across the ages. As our eyes grow heavy, we may dream of the sound of distant lyres and flutes wafting from a palace courtyard, of dancers and bulls, and the laughter of a people who lived long ago under the Cretan sun, before their chapter quietly closed. The Minoans left behind magnificent ruins and tantalizing myths. Even as they fell, a new power was rising on the Greek mainland. Now we shift our gaze to that mainland and the civilization that inherited the Minoans' mantle, only to perish in the same sweeping collapse that ended the Bronze Age. Enter the world of the Mycenaeans, the age of Agamemnon and the Trojan War, and witness how it too crumbled into darkness. In the imaginations of later generations, the Mycenaeans were the stuff of epic. This late Bronze Age civilization of mainland Greece, circa 1600–1100 BCE, is the backdrop for Homer's tales of the Trojan War and heroes like Agamemnon, Menelaus, and Achilles. The Mycenaeans themselves left no literary epics, but they did leave imposing citadels, rich tombs, and a script that we can read. Linear B, an early form of Greek used for palace record keeping. At their height, 1400–100 BC, The Mycenaean Greeks were the lords of the Aegean. They built citadels on hilltops, each ruled by a one-axe king, at places like Mycenae, Pylos, Tiryns, Thebes, and Athens. The citadel of Mycenae in Argolis, southern Greece, gives the entire culture its name. Even in ruin, Mycenae is awe-inspiring. Its famous lion gate still stands, 2 lions carved in relief above a massive stone lintel, guarding the entrance. The walls of Mycenae and other sites like Tiryns are made of huge limestone boulders, so large that later Greeks thought giants, the Cyclopes, built them, hence the term Cyclopean walls. Passing through the Lion Gate, you step into a realm that around 11250 BCE was bustling with armored soldiers, scribes tallying tributes, artisans working gold and bronze, and chariots clattering out for war or hunting. The Mycenaeans were heirs to the Minoans in some ways. They adopted the Linear A script and adapted it into Linear B for their own Greek language. They took on aspects of Minoan art and religion, but they were also more overtly martial. They buried their nobles in shaft graves, and later in monumental tholos tombs, beehive-shaped underground tombs lined with stone. One such tomb at Mycenae, often called the Treasury of Atreus, still impresses with its corbelled dome over 13 meters high. In these graves, Mycenaean elites were interred with masks of gold, one of which Heinrich Schliemann dubbed the Mask of Agamemnon when he discovered it in the 19th century. Gilt weapons and ornate jewelry, signs of a warrior aristocracy. The Mycenaean economy was centralized and bureaucratic. Tablets in their palace archives record rations for workers, inventory of chariots and armor, and offerings to gods. They traded widely. Mycenaean pottery is found in Egypt and the Levant, and they likely hired themselves out as mercenaries or traders abroad. They perhaps also conducted raids. Some speculate that tales of sea peoples might have included Mycenaean adventurers. Yet, around 120 BCE, this vibrant Mycenaean world came crashing down. In site after site, archaeologists have uncovered destruction layers or abandonment around that date. Pylos' palace burnt to the ground, its Linear B tablets accidentally baked and preserved by the fire. Mycenae's houses torched, Tiryns damaged, Thebes and others experiencing calamity. Within a few decades, the great palace centers were no more. The population of Greece plummeted, literacy was lost, Linear B writing disappears entirely, and the region entered a dark age that would last centuries. The very knowledge of building in cut stone or organizing large states vanished. When Greeks re-emerge in the historical record around 800 BCE, they are living in small villages, and even the memory of the Mycenaeans survives only in oral myth. What caused such a complete collapse? This is part of the broader Late Bronze Age collapse circa 1200 BCE that affected many lands. As with the Hittites, a confluence of factors is likely. Mycenaean Greece of the 13th century BCE was under stress from multiple fronts. Some evidence points to internal strife, perhaps civil wars or uprisings. The fortification walls at sites like Mycenae were extended and strengthened in their final years, hinting at increased fear of attack, maybe not only from foreigners but rival Greek kingdoms. Some Linear B tablets ominously list watchers at the coast, suggesting the palaces were concerned about seaborne invaders or pirates. And indeed, the mysterious sea peoples ravaged the eastern Mediterranean around this time. Coinciding with these events, could some of those raiders have struck Greece or its trade routes? Possibly. Moreover, climate evidence, like from buried pollen and lake sediments, indicates that around 100 BCE a series of droughts afflicted the eastern Mediterranean. For agrarian societies already operating near the margin, a few bad harvests could incite famine and social chaos. Famine may have weakened the bonds holding the palatial economies together. Hungry populations can rebel or migrate. We know from later Greek traditions that populations did indeed move during this unsettled period. Tribes like the Dorians are said to have migrated into southern Greece, possibly pushed by chain reactions of upheaval. Archaeology shows new styles of pottery and weapons emerging after the collapse, suggesting new groups or at least new cultural influences. The fall of palaces would have also meant the collapse of the complex redistributive economy. Without the palace, specialist craftsmen lost patronage, and trades that required large organization, like bronze smelting that needs imported tin, dwindle. There's even a hint of epidemic. Skeletons from some final Bronze Age contexts show signs of stress and possible disease, though that is hard to ascertain. Likely the Mycenaeans were hit by all these troubles at once: famine, war, rebellion, migration. As one archaeologist phrased it, it was a systems collapse. The interlinked nature of Bronze Age civilization meant that once a few key supports fell, the whole edifice came down, and so the house of Atreus fell. By 1100 BCE, Greece was a patchwork of small villages. Writing was forgotten. No more linear B lists of chariots or wine. The beautiful wall paintings ceased. The Tholos tombs were no longer built. To later Greeks, the age of those massive citadels and gold masks was a lost heroic age. Poets sang of it in epic poems, glamorizing and distorting the memory. Homer's Iliad and Odyssey are thought to encode some echoes of Mycenaean times, passed down orally, but the actual knowledge, how to build a 3-story palace or forge a suit of bronze armor in Mycenaean style, was gone. Only around the 8th century BCE did Greece begin to recover, reinventing writing with the alphabet and slowly rebuilding urban life, never realizing fully that they were heirs to a fallen civilization that had peaked 500 years before. Visiting the ruins of Mycenae or Pylos, the latter with its Megaron Hall where King Nestor might have held court, one feels a tinge of melancholy amid the stones. At Mycenae, stand inside the treasury of Atreus' tomb for a moment. The corbelled dome still intact overhead, its apex open to the sky. The acoustics make even a quiet hum resonate. It's easy to imagine a funeral procession of Mycenaeans, bearing a noble's body with gold funeral mask into this chamber, lit by flickering torches, the laments echoing off the walls. Now there is only silence and the occasional drip of water. Outside, the citadel's collapsed walls and burnt debris speak to that day of doom when Mycenae met its end. The site of Pylos, Palace of Nestor, has a different feel, overlooking the Bay of Novarino. It was torched around 180 BCE, and one can see the outlines of the palace rooms and even a bathtub thought to be Nestor's bath. In those final moments, someone hurriedly scribbled a last linear B tablet, perhaps an inventory of weapons as invaders approached, and then the fire overtook them. That tablet was found, half-baked by the flames. These vignettes draw a picture of an abrupt, violent end. Ultimately, the Mycenaean collapse, like the Hittite, left behind a dark age. To close our eyes and think of Greece in 1000 BCE is to imagine a simpler, more primitive scene compared to the cosmopolitan palaces of a few centuries earlier. But myth and oral tradition kept faint embers of the memory alive, enough that when we read Homer or stand at Mycenae, we feel the presence of those heroes and their world. As we drift in thought, perhaps the faint notes of a lyre or the clatter of hooves echo in the distance, but they fade into the night. The palaces are dark, their stones cold, and the age of the Mycenaeans lives only in dreams. We have now witnessed the falls of Bronze Age kingdoms and classical trade empires. For our final story in this segment, we journey to a time far earlier, before any of the civilizations we've discussed, to an ancient hill in Anatolia. There at Göbekli Tepe, a monumental site from the Stone Age, was built and abandoned long before the advent of cities, challenging our understanding of how civilization itself began. Before cities, before writing, before agriculture, as we know it. Over 10,000 years ago, humans gathered on a hilltop in what is now southeastern Turkey to erect something utterly extraordinary. The site is called Göbekli Tepe, and it is often cited as the world's oldest known temple complex. Here, around 900 and 600 BCE, nearly 12,000 years before the present, people who still lived by hunting and foraging, not farming, quarried and carved immense T-shaped stone pillars, then raised them upright in circular enclosures. Each pillar can stand up to 5 or 6 meters tall and weigh 7 to 10 tons. They are adorned with exquisite carvings of animals, fierce lions, leaping gazelles, snarling wild boar, cranes and vultures stretching their wings, even spiders and abstract symbols. The artistry is fluid and confident, clearly the work of skilled craftspeople. Some pillars bear stylized arms and hands, suggesting they represent stylized humanoid figures, perhaps ancient deities or mythical ancestors. All of this, created in stone so early in human history, when our ancestors were just transitioning out of the last ice age, has revolutionized archaeologists' understanding of that era. Göbekli Tepe sits on a barren knoll. Its name means potbelly hill. For millennia, it just appeared as a series of small mounds. Locals thought it was an ancient burial ground, or just natural terrain. In the 1990s, when excavations began under German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt, the true significance of the site emerged, as layer after layer of finely crafted stone pillars came to light. Archaeologists realized they were dealing with something unprecedentedly old and complex. Megalithic architecture from a time usually associated with nomadic bands. This challenged the long-held view that organized religion and monumental architecture came after agriculture had produced surplus food. Here at Göbekli Tepe, it seems, a spiritual or communal vision, possibly of ritual sanctuaries, came first, and might have actually spurred the development of farming in the region. Indeed, the surrounding area is where some of the earliest evidence of domesticated wheat has been found, dated not long after Göbekli Tepe's active phase. Perhaps groups congregated here for rituals, feasts, and gatherings, requiring ample food, which encouraged the tending of wild grains and herds. The site itself was constructed in phases. The earliest enclosures, circa 9600–8800 BCE, are the most impressive, large circles, 10 to 30 meters across, of T-pillars, linked by low stone walls. Two taller pillars stand in the center of each circle, like central monoliths, encircled by slightly smaller pillars facing them. It's thought that ceremonies were held in these stone circles under the open sky, though some pillars might have supported roofs of perishable materials. The purpose remains speculative. No obvious domestic remains like cooking hearths or trash pits have been found, so it seems purely a ceremonial site, not a village. Perhaps different clans or bands met here on special occasions, to worship, to exchange goods or brides, to socialize, to share stories. One carving famously shows a headless human figure beside a vulture, which some interpret in light of ritual excarnation, exposing bodies for vultures, a practice known in some early cultures, tying into beliefs in death and the spirit world. The very scope of coordination to build Göbekli Tepe is astounding, organizing hundreds of people to quarry and transport multi-ton stones, likely using rollers or ropes, to carve intricate reliefs with flint tools, and to assemble these structures. All implies an advanced social structure and shared purpose at a time long before kings or cities. And then, perhaps even more mysteriously, Göbekli Tepe was deliberately buried. After some centuries of use, the people of that era filled in the circular enclosures with dirt, rubble, and refuse, entombing the standing pillars around 8000 BC. They then built smaller, cruder structures on top, and eventually abandoned the site altogether. Why would they bury their monumental sanctuaries? Was it an act of ritual closure, a way to respectfully decommission a sacred space? Or perhaps the socio-religious focus shifted elsewhere? Maybe as true village life and farming took off, new rituals and actual settlements replaced the old hilltop gatherings. In any case, the people who made Göbekli Tepe vanish from history except for this legacy. We don't know what they called themselves or what language they spoke. By 7000 BCE, the hill was quiet, and soon nature concealed the marvel, preserving it beneath until our time. For thousands of years thereafter, Göbekli Tepe lay forgotten under its self-created mound. The nearby communities evolved, agriculture spread, and by the time writing was invented, much later, Göbekli Tepe's creators were as mythical as gods. Only now, in the 21st century, are we truly uncovering this place and grappling with its significance. To visit Göbekli Tepe today is to feel you are on the threshold of deep human memory. The pillars stand under a protective canopy, their carvings still sharp after 11,000 years. Touching the limestone, though usually not permitted to touch, one can feel the texture that Stone Age hands once felt as they chiseled out a fox or leopard. The quiet on the hill, with gentle breezes blowing across sun-bleached grass, encourages contemplation. This was a site of perhaps profound spiritual meaning, a mountain of revelation for early humans. Picture a clear pre-dawn at Göbekli Tepe 10,000 years ago. Torches flicker, illuminating pillars as people gather. As the eastern sky brightens, maybe the first rays of sunlight strike between the twin central pillars of an enclosure. Was it a line to the solstice, or a star? Perhaps chants begin. Drums beat softly. The carved animals around seem to dance in the firelight's flicker. Then, as daylight grows, the rituals conclude and feasting commences. Roasting game meat, sharing brewed drinks, a celebration of life, community, and the spirit world that binds them. Such scenes, though speculative, remind us that the builders of Göbekli Tepe were fully human in their hopes and fears, even if their ways were so different. By nightfall now, Göbekli Tepe stands deserted except for archaeologists' tools. The stars that once guided those ancient ceremonies sparkle overhead. The site's discovery has in a sense resurrected those Stone Age people's legacy, giving them a voice without words. They speak through stone, saying, "We too sought meaning in the cosmos. We too built and dreamed." And as we conclude this second segment, reflecting on the Hittites, Exumites, Minoans, Mycenaeans, and even the nameless Göbekli Tepe builders, a gentle realization dawns. All things have their time. Each of these cultures rose, shone brightly, and then, whether by fire or famine, or the slow drift of time, fell into stillness. But in that stillness, they left seeds for the future. Ideas, genes, stories, and ruins, from which later peoples, and we ourselves, draw knowledge and inspiration. Good night. In the humid jungles and rice paddies of Southeast Asia lie the remains of one of the medieval world's most splendid civilizations, the Khmer Empire of Cambodia. This empire, which lasted roughly from the 9th to the 15th century AD, reached its zenith in the city of Angkor, near the modern town of Siem Reap. Angkor was not just one city, but a whole complex of cities, temples and reservoirs, spread across the landscape at its height around the 12th-13th centuries. The Angkor region supported a population that recent scholars estimate might have been close to 1 million people, making it arguably the largest urban agglomeration of the pre-industrial world. The crown jewel of Angkor is Angkor Wat, the largest religious monument on earth, a sandstone temple mountain built in the early 12th century by King Suryavarman II. To behold Angkor Wat at dawn, with its 5 lotus-like towers silhouetted against a pink sky and reflected in a broad moat, is to witness a scene of profound tranquility and grandeur. This temple, dedicated originally to the Hindu god Vishnu and later used for Buddhist worship, is adorned with thousands of feet of exquisite bas-relief carvings, armies of warriors, celestial dancing nymphs, epic battles of gods and demons, a stone tapestry of Khmer cosmology and court life. Angkor Wat is but one of many structures. The Khmer kings built numerous temples. Bayung, at the heart of Angkor Thom, the royal city, with its 54 towers each bearing gigantic serene faces, gazing out over the cardinal directions. Tapra Phrum, where twisted tree roots strangle grey walls and carved devatas, goddesses, peer out from moss. Priya Kun, Bante, Srey, and others, each with its unique artistry. The engineering achievements of the Khmer were equally impressive. They constructed vast barrays, reservoirs. The West Baray and East Baray are each several kilometers long, and a network of canals and moats, forming a complex hydraulic city. This system captured and distributed water from the Siem Reap River and monsoon rains, enabling rice agriculture on a scale and reliability unprecedented in the region. Water was the lifeblood of Angkor. It allowed the land to yield multiple rice harvests a year, feeding a huge population and freeing labor for temple construction and other arts. The Khmer Empire was powerful. Under kings like Suryavarman II and Jayavarman VII, it extended its influence over much of mainland Southeast Asia, encompassing present-day Cambodia, Thailand, Laos and southern Vietnam. Jayavarman VII, late 12th, early 13th century, was especially notable. A devout Buddhist king, he built the Bayon and many other temples, and also hospitals and rest houses along roads, an early form of public welfare. One imagines Angkor in that era as a lively metropolis, streets filled with officials in silk, monks in saffron robes, foreign traders from China or India, leading ox carts with wares, elephants swinging along bearing the king's edicts, and everywhere the sound of construction, chiseling of stone, creaking of wooden cranes, chanting of workers given the scale of projects. Yet for all its might, Angkor did not last. The decline of the Khmer Empire came in the 14th and 15th centuries through a combination of environmental strain and external pressures. One major factor was climate change, specifically a pattern of intense droughts punctuated by heavy monsoon floods. Tree ring data and sediment studies in Cambodia show that the region experienced several severe drought periods in the 14th century, each lasting years, then sudden deluges of rainfall. The sophisticated water infrastructure of Angkor was designed for a relatively stable climate. It struggled under these extremes. During droughts, the reservoirs would have dwindled, crops failed, and drinking water grown scarce. The Khmer likely dug deeper canals and tried to expand their system. Some unfinished projects from this late period have been identified, but it may not have been enough. Then, when the rains returned furiously, the sudden floodwaters broke through the weakened infrastructure. Archaeological evidence shows that channels and bridges were damaged by massive floods. One crumbling bridge, with water surge marks, stands as a mute testament to a monsoon that overwhelmed Angkor, Tom's Canal. The damage to the hydraulic network would have been devastating. Without reliable irrigation, the rice fields could not support the huge population, leading to food shortages and possibly social upheaval. Farmers might abandon the city for more fertile regions. At the same time, the Khmer Empire's political and military strength waned. Rival kingdoms, especially the rising Thai kingdom of Ayutthaya to the west, pressed in. In 1431 AD, Ayutthaya's armies are traditionally said to have captured Angkor after a protracted siege, marking a symbolic end of the Angkorian period. It's possible that by then, Angkor was already weakened from within, perhaps partially depopulated by the environmental crises. The Thai invasion may have been the final blow, or even more of a takeover of an already declining city. After 1431, the Khmer court moved south, nearer to today's Phnom Penh, and Angkor was largely abandoned, save for some monasteries that still cared for Angkor Wat, which was never completely forgotten. Unlike Petra or Machu Picchu, Cambodian and foreign visitors, including a Portuguese friar in the 16th century, still knew of Angkor's existence, but the metropolis, the beating heart of the empire, was gone. Over succeeding centuries, the jungle cloaked many of the temples. Trees and vines worked their slow destruction, toppling towers and prying stones apart. Locals still lived in the area, a small village here or there, but nothing like the urban glory of old. By the time French explorers rediscovered Angkor in the 19th century, guided by Cambodian monks and villagers, they found a landscape of romantically ruined temples, some maintained as active Buddhist pagodas, others swallowed by kapuk trees. Henry Mouhot's writings in the 1860s, describing Angkor as grander than anything left to us by Greece or Rome, captivated the Western world. Today, after much restoration, Angkor's key sites are stable and draw visitors from around the globe. But if you stray just a bit off the beaten path amid the vast Angkor Archaeological Park, you can find yourself utterly alone with the ruins. Perhaps you step through a Gopura gate into an overgrown courtyard, the carvings of Apsara's heavenly dancers smiling faintly from the walls. The air is thick and warm, filled with the sound of cicadas. A few orange-robed monks may shuffle by. A gecko chirps. There is a peaceful, almost gentle atmosphere. Unlike some collapses marked by violence, Angkor's decline feels gradual. Angkor Wat was never destroyed. It was cared for continuously by Buddhists, which is why it stands so intact. Angkor Thom's fall was more disruptive, yet what we sense now is a city that slowly exhaled its human life and let the forest resume custody. As night descends on Angkor, the silhouettes of temple towers merge with treetops. Fireflies blink above ancient moat waters. It's easy to drift into reverie and imagine you hear faint music from a royal procession, or the laughter of girls bathing by torchlight on the edges of the Bari, or the distant gong of a temple bell calling the faithful. Then a nightbird calls, and you awaken to the quiet present. Angkor's people moved on, their capital shifted and their empire shrank, but the Khmer nation persisted, and so did their cultural brilliance in new forms. The lost city became part of nature's dream. In our dreams it still stands, a harmonious blend of human devotion and the tropical earth, a gentle echo of glory, fading into green. On a plain east of the great Mississippi River, just a few miles from where the modern city of St. Louis stands, lie dozens of enormous earth mounds, the last remains of an indigenous city that thrived 1,000 years ago. This site is known today as Cahokia, and it was the principal city of what we call the Mississippian culture, which spread across much of the eastern United States, from roughly 800 to 1500 AD. Cahokia in its prime, 100 AD, was the largest urban center north of Mesoamerica. It spanned 5 to 6 square miles and had a population of perhaps 15,000 in the city proper, and up to 20–30,000 in the metropolitan area. That would make it comparable in size to medieval European cities like London or Paris, around the same period. It's an astonishing fact that around 1100 AD, one of the biggest cities in the world was not in Europe, Asia or Africa, but on the rich floodplain of the Mississippi, built by the ancestors of today's Native American nations. Cahokia's most prominent feature is Monk's Mound, a colossal earthen pyramid that still towers about 30 meters high and has a base larger than the Great Pyramid of Giza. It was constructed basket-load of soil at a time, a monumental achievement of communal labor. Atop this mound likely stood a large wooden building, perhaps a temple, or the residence of the paramount chief, sometimes called the Great Sun, or Birdman, in interpretations of Cahokian iconography. Around Monk's Mound were plazas, and dozens of smaller mounds, some of which served as substructures for buildings and others as burial mounds for elites. Archaeologists have unearthed evidence of a complex society, stockades, fortification walls that were built and rebuilt, suggesting the city had defensive needs, specialized workshops for making tools and ornaments, and exotic trade items, indicating long-distance connections, Gulf Coast seashells, Great Lakes, copper, Appalachian mica, and more. Cahokians practiced a form of intensive agriculture centered on maize-corn cultivation. Agriculture supported the large population and the social stratification. There were clearly powerful leaders or priests, as indicated by the lavish grave goods in some burials, including one famously dubbed Birdman burial, with thousands of shell beads laid out in the shape of a falcon. They also had a vibrant religious ritual life. One of the intriguing structures found at Cahokia is the so-called woodhenge, circles of large cedar posts, seemingly aligned to solar events, like solstices and equinoxes. The woodhenge at Cahokia, reconstructed today with red posts, likely served as a calendar or ceremonial space where the Cahokians could mark seasonal change and hold festivals. One can imagine the community gathering in the pre-dawn hush on the equinox, the chief or priest standing at a specific post, waiting for the sun to rise aligned with another post on the horizon, and as the first light appears, a great cheer or chant arising from the people. These rituals would reinforce social cohesion and the cosmological beliefs that underpinned Cahokia's society. However, like so many urban civilizations, Cahokia did not last indefinitely. By 1200 AD, signs of strain appeared, and over the next century or so, the city underwent decline. By 1350 AD, Cahokia was largely abandoned. When European explorers later came through the region in the 16th and 17th centuries, they found no cities, only scattered villages and tribes, with oral histories that might echo the memory of places like Cahokia. Why did Cahokia collapse? This is an area of ongoing research and debate. Several likely factors are considered. Environmental degradation is one. Evidence suggests the Cahokians heavily logged the forests for fuel, construction, and to clear land. Trees cut from nearby uplands could have led to erosion. Some have hypothesized that massive flooding could have occurred as a result, damaging crops and swamping parts of the city. But recent geoarchaeological studies complicate that picture, finding that while deforestation happened, catastrophic flooding evidence is scant at key times. Another factor strongly supported by data is climate change. Around the time of Cahokia's decline, 1200 to 1400 AD, there were episodes of prolonged drought in the mid-continental US, part of the transition to the Little Ice Age. Maize agriculture would have suffered greatly during multi-year droughts, leading to malnutrition and conflict. Indeed, some signs of nutritional stress and violence have been observed in late Cahokian burials. There's also evidence of social turmoil. The fact that Cahokia built and rebuilt palisade walls around its central precinct multiple times suggests rising conflict or fear of attack. Perhaps internal factions fought, or subject peoples around Cahokia, who provided labor and tribute, rebelled, causing instability. Archaeologists have found arrowheads embedded in some structures, hinting at warfare. Additionally, disease vectors may have increased as population density did, though this was pre-Columbian before European diseases. Endemic illnesses or sanitation issues could have played a role in weakening the populace. The decline likely wasn't a single cataclysm, but a combination of stresses, environmental, climatic, social. People might have gradually decided that life was better elsewhere, so they emigrated, streaming away from Cahokia over years and decades, heading to smaller settlements that could sustain them. By the time a truly devastating drought hit around the mid-14th century, as climate records indicate, there may not have been many folks left in the city at all. Thus, the great earthen mounds were left to stand vigil over an empty plaza. Grasses grew over the temple mounds, the post circles rotted away, the wooden houses and palisades decayed back into the soil, leaving only subtle stains. Successor cultures, like the late prehistoric and proto-historic tribes encountered by Europeans, the Illinois for instance, possibly knew these sites as ancient and sacred places, but no written record from them survives to explain what they believed about them. Early Euro-American settlers in the 18th-19th centuries were astonished to find what looked like man-made hills and assumed a lost race of mound builders, separate from Native Americans, must have constructed them, a misconception that endured until the mid-19th century, when it was finally acknowledged that these were the work of indigenous peoples' ancestors. To stand atop Monk's Mound today and gaze over the flat Mississippi floodplain is a moving experience. In summer, the sound of cicadas rises in waves. The modern city's skyline is visible in the distance, but around the mound itself, there is quiet, park-like open space. Scattered about are other lower mounds, now just gentle hills of earth, covered in meadow flowers. You can almost see in your mind's eye the ghosts of a civilization, plazas filled with families, smoke curling from thatched rooftops at dusk, processions ascending the great mound with torches at night, and perhaps the distant rhythm of drums carrying on the wind. Then blink, and it's gone, replaced by the hum of crickets and a lone hawk circling the sky. Cahokia's story is a reminder that urban life is not solely a Eurasian experience. Humans everywhere have proven capable of organization and ingenuity, building cities suited to their environment. It's also a reminder that even without written chronicles, a vanished city can speak volumes. In the end, the people of Cahokia did not vanish entirely. Their descendants survived in the many Native American nations that followed. But the urban way of life here did vanish, and by the time history as written by Europeans came, the very memory of Cahokia's existence had faded from native lore, or at least was not recognized by outsiders. We, who visit now, are left to interpret the mute earthen monuments. In the gentle breeze at twilight, with the sun's last rays glinting off the slopes of Monk's Mound, it's easy to let the imagination populate the scene with those who came before. A sense of calm pervades. These mounds have slumbered for centuries. The chaos and hardship that likely marked Cahokia's final years are over, healed by time. All that remains is the earth, carefully shaped by human hands long ago, and the knowledge, slowly regained by archaeologists, that here once stood a great city, one that rose with hope and ambition, and fell as circumstances turned, leaving behind only the silent ground to remember it. Scattered across the rugged, sun-drenched landscapes of Sardinia, from coastal plains to rocky highlands, stand mysterious beehive-shaped stone towers called nuraghi. Over 7,000 of these ancient towers are known, giving Sardinia a uniquely prehistoric skyline, unlike anywhere else on Earth. They are the legacy of the Nuragic civilization, which arose in the Bronze Age around 1800 BCE and lasted through the Iron Age until the Roman conquest of Sardinia in the late 3rd century BCE. The Nuragic people did not leave behind written records. Their language remains unknown, perhaps a non-Indo-European tongue, or a very early relative of languages later spoken in the region. So everything we know comes from archaeology, the scant mentions by outsiders, and later folklore. The Nuragi, singular of Nuragi, typically consists of a truncated conical tower made of large blocks of stone, carefully stacked without mortar. They often have an internal chamber, usually beehive-like, corbel vaulted, and small slit windows. Some Nuragi stand alone, others are part of more complex structures with multiple towers linked by walls, forming what look like fortress villages. The largest, such as Su-Nuragsi, di Barumini, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, have central towers originally over 15 meters tall, surrounded by several smaller towers and a defensive rampart, a veritable stronghold of stone. It is awe-inspiring to walk among these ruins and consider that they were built more than 3,000 years ago with no cranes or mortar, just human muscle, ingenuity, and perhaps wood-leverage technologies. The precisely placed basalt and limestone blocks have weathered millennia of wind and quake. When you step into a Nuragi's central chamber, the temperature drops slightly and a hush falls. A shaft of light from a high entrance might illuminate the perfectly arched dome of rocks overhead, each course cantilevered inward. It feels like a space built by giants or master masons, yet done in an age before written calculations, a testament to skill passed by practice and tradition. Why did the Nuragic Sardinians build these towers? Theories abound. Their sheer number and distribution, covering the entire island, indicate they were central to Nuragic life. They may have been fortifications, signaling a time of conflict and need for defense. Perhaps the Nuragic tribes were frequently at war with each other, or fending off outside threats. The towers, often placed on hilltops or strategic points, would make effective lookout posts overseeing valleys and coastlines. Some may have been status symbols or dwellings of chieftains, sturdy homes for the local elite that doubled as refuges in case of attack. Others might have served ritual purposes or community granaries. Likely, over their long period of use, many Nuragic show evidence of centuries of occupation and modification. They played multiple roles. The Nuragic people also left behind fascinating bronze figurines, bronzetti, depicting warriors with horned helmets, women, animals, and boats, which give a glimpse into their life and beliefs. These come mostly from the Iron Age, after 900 BCE, and show, for example, archers and soldiers that suggest a martial society, but also everyday scenes and possibly deities. One famous site, Santuario di Santa Cristina, features a sacred well, an underground stone well, with a beautifully carved stairway that descends to water, likely used for ritual purification or star observations. Its structure aligns with certain lunar standstill events. Such sophistication hints that the Nuragic people had a rich ceremonial life tied perhaps to water and astral cycles. As the Iron Age progressed, Sardinia increasingly came into contact with other Mediterranean civilizations. The Phoenicians, and later Carthaginians, established trading posts on Sardinian coasts in the first millennium BCE. They sought metals. Sardinia had copper and lead, and possibly iron. The Nuragic people engaged in trade. Archaeologists find Nuragic ceramics and bronzes in Etruscan Italy and elsewhere, and foreign goods in Sardinia. Over time, this contact became domination. Carthage conquered parts of Sardinia in the 6th century BCE, and then Rome took the entire island from Carthage in 20. It's likely that by the time of the Roman conquest, the Nuragic way of life had already transformed under Carthaginian influence. Coastal Nuragic settlements might have been under Punic rule, while interior highland clans held to old ways a bit longer. The Romans mentioned the Ialean Bellari, tribes in Sardinia's interior, who resisted Roman rule fiercely, possibly direct descendants of the Nuragic folk, still clinging to the mountains and their towers. Eventually, of course, Rome subdued the whole island. Latin language and Roman culture spread, and the distinct Nuragic culture dissipated, absorbed into Roman Sardinia. Thus, the Nuragic civilization vanished, not in an abrupt cataclysm, but through a slow process of colonization and cultural blending. Their stone towers outlasted them, becoming silent ruins. In later Sardinian folklore, these nuraghi were sometimes attributed to mythic beings. Some locals believed they were built by giants or by an ancient vanished people. Indeed, one Sardinian legend speaks of a race of giants who once lived there, and interestingly, excavations at some nuraghi have uncovered very large burial tombs known as tombs of the giants, communal graves that fueled such tales. But the real nuragic people, though not giants, achieved giant feats of engineering for their time. Imagine Sardinia, around 1000 BCE. On a hilltop, a nuraghi's brazier fire flickers at dusk as villagers bring in their sheep and goats. The chief, draped in woven wool and bronze ornaments, stands atop the tower watching over his domain, perhaps contemplating if distant smoke signals friend or foe. Below, round huts of stone and thatch cluster around the nuraghi, the air smelling of wood smoke and salted meat. Now fast forward to 500 BCE. A Phoenician trader arrives in a nearby coastal village with colorful beads and wine in exchange for local metals. The world is changing. New weapons, new diseases, new alliances. Some nuraghi are maintained, others fall into disuse as people gravitate toward the coastal trade hubs or new forms of housing. By the Roman era, many towers are abandoned. A few might still be occupied by rebels or shepherds, but gradually even those are left behind as Rome's order extends and new stone buildings, Roman villas and roads appear. Over centuries, the nuraghi collapsed, bit by bit. Some stones were taken to build farms and villages in medieval times. Others remained, half crumbled but steadfast. Today, farmers plow fields around them. One might serve as a shed or a makeshift corral. Many, though, sit lonely on wild lands, visited mainly by curious travelers, archaeologists, and the occasional grazing sheep seeking shade against its weathered stones. Visiting a nuragh, like Nuragh, Loza, or La Juno, on a quiet day, one often has the site entirely to oneself. The Sardinian sun is warm. The only sounds are wind rustling the scrub and distant cowbells. Climbing into the ancient tower, you feel the temperature drop and see lizards scuttle on the stones. It's easy to wonder about the countless lives that passed through here. Births, feasts, councils of war, moments of prayer to forgotten gods. All between these thick walls, now there's just silence. The people who built it are gone beyond recall. Even their name for themselves is unknown. We call them nuragh after their structures, but they left an indelible mark on Sardinia's identity. Sardinians today, though speaking Italian or their own Romance dialect and practicing modern lifestyles, still feel a connection to these mysterious ruins dotting their homeland. Perhaps at dusk, if you sit by a nuragh's entrance, you might catch a whisper of wind that sounds like voices. Could it be the old ones, speaking in a tongue lost to time, only imagination? A herdsman leads his flock home in the distance, much as might have been done 3,000 years ago. In the twilight, the nuragh stands dark against the orange sky, an enduring silhouette. The nuragh's civilization has long faded, subsumed by history's tides, but the stones they placed remain, patient, immovable, and eloquent in their mystery. We listen, and in our gentle pondering of their fate, we honor those unknown ancestors of Sardinia. In the rolling hills of southeastern Zimbabwe, amid acacia trees and tall grass, rise the majestic stone ruins of Great Zimbabwe, the largest pre-colonial structure south of the Sahara, and the center of a powerful African kingdom in the Middle Ages. The word Zimbabwe comes from the Shona phrase Dzimba da Zimbabwe, meaning houses of stone, and indeed Great Zimbabwe is an extraordinary city of stone walls, built entirely without mortar. The most imposing of these walls form the Great Enclosure, an elliptical structure over 250 meters in circumference. Its outer walls stand up to 11 meters high and 6 meters thick, constructed from tens of thousands of granite blocks, expertly cut and stacked in tight courses. Within the Great Enclosure, one finds smaller passages and a famous conical tower, about 9 meters tall. The purpose of this solid tower remains a mystery. perhaps a symbol of royal authority or a granary emblem to signify abundance. On a nearby hill dominating the site are the hill ruins, a series of stone-walled compounds and terraces that likely served as the royal acropolis or temple area. From that height, one can survey the whole valley, imagining it teeming with life. Thousands of huts, made of mud brick or daga thatch, sprawled across the slopes, livestock pens and the smoke from iron smelting furnaces rising into the African sky. Great Zimbabwe was occupied and in its prime between roughly 1100 and 1450 AD. At its height, it's estimated to have housed up to 15,000 to 20,000 people, making it one of the largest cities of its time in Africa. It was the capital of a kingdom that controlled trade routes and resources in the region. Archaeological finds at Great Zimbabwe include Chinese porcelain, Persian glass beads, and Arabian coins, revealing that it was part of extensive trade networks reaching the Swahili coast and beyond. The wealth of Great Zimbabwe was built on cattle, the main form of wealth and food, crops like sorghum and millet, and critically, gold. The surrounding plateau is rich in gold deposits. The people of Great Zimbabwe mined gold and ivory from elephant hunting and traded these via river and overland routes to merchants on the Mozambique coast, such as those from Kilwa and Sofala. In return, they received exotic luxuries, colorful glass beads, glazed ceramics from Asia, fine cloth. This prosperity allowed the rise of a ruling elite, likely an early Shona dynasty, that could commission large-scale building. The dry stone architecture technique was a local innovation. Earlier, smaller-scale stone enclosures in the region prefigure what was achieved at Great Zimbabwe, but never on this scale. One imagines a succession of kings, or wine, possibly semi-divine in Shona culture, living atop the hill complex and presiding over ceremonies and the distribution of goods. Commoners lived in huts outside the stone compounds, but the craftsmanship of the walls suggests a highly skilled labor force and social organization to support them. Great Zimbabwe, in its heyday, must have been impressive, shining granite walls in the noonday sun, bustling markets with goods from distant lands, rich fields of grain around, and herds of cattle lowing in pens. The decline of Great Zimbabwe came in the 15th century. By around 1450, the site was largely abandoned. Why did this happen? Scholars believe that a combination of factors played a role. Environmental stress is one. The land around Great Zimbabwe may have been overutilized, overgrazing by the huge cattle herds, and deforestation for construction and firewood could have led to soil depletion. Additionally, climate fluctuations might have induced drought periods, making it hard to sustain the large population. Another major factor was a shift in trade. In the 15th century, new gold fields farther north, near modern Mozambique, Zimbabwe border, began to be exploited and new trade routes opened, leading to the ascendance of other powers like the Matapa state, Matapa. As trade focus moved, Great Zimbabwe lost its economic primacy. Political instability may have followed, possibly disputes over succession or a weakening of central authority, as provinces broke away to control the new gold routes. By the time the Portuguese began exploring the East African coast in the early 1500s, Great Zimbabwe was an echo. They heard tales of a great inland city of stone, but it was no longer inhabited at a grand scale. However, the site was never completely forgotten locally. It remained a venerated place, likely part of oral histories of the Shona as a city of ancestors. When European colonizers, explorers, hunters, etc. came upon Great Zimbabwe in the late 19th century, they were astonished by its scale and sophistication. Tragically, due to the racism of that era, many refused to believe it could have been built by native Africans. Instead, fantastical theories arose. Some claimed it was built by the Queen of Sheba, or by Phoenicians, or other Old World civilizations. These claims were not based on evidence, but on biases. In the early 20th century, excavations by colonial authorities even deliberately ignored or destroyed evidence to push non-African origin theories. Only later in the 20th century did archaeologists like Gertrude Catton Thompson in 1929 firmly establish that Great Zimbabwe was built by African ancestors of the Shona, which is now universally accepted by scholars. But during the colonial period of Rhodesia, the true history was suppressed. The colonial government didn't want the African population drawing pride and nationalist sentiment from a majestic pre-colonial past. It wasn't until Zimbabwe's independence in 1980 that this heritage was fully embraced. The country even took its name from Great Zimbabwe, and the iconic Zimbabwe bird, stone-carved birds found at the site, possibly royal totems, became the national emblem. Visiting Great Zimbabwe today, one can wander freely through the hill complex, squeezing between stone passageways that once were walked by kings and priests a half-millennium ago. Then, descending to the valley, you approach the great enclosure. Standing before the curving wall, perfectly smooth and sloping, you feel small. It's like standing at the base of an ancient fortress, yet there's an elegance to it, with a chevron pattern decoration in parts, and the mystery of that looming conical tower within. Birds chirp in the nearby fig trees. Occasionally a troop of baboons might scamper across the ruins, as if they too are heirs to this place. It's a peaceful scene now, belying the fact that at its zenith, this was a bustling urban center, with smoke from 1,000 cooking fires rising each morning, and drums sounding from the hill at sunset. At twilight, the stone walls take on a golden hue in the angled light. You might sit on a rock and listen to the silence. Perhaps, if fortunate, you catch the distant song of a Shona elder who sometimes visits to honor ancestors, or simply the wind whistling through the grasses growing atop the walls. Great Zimbabwe's structures have no roof now. Open to the sky, they feel almost like natural features of the landscape, as if grown from the earth itself. Yet they are undeniably the work of human hands, who loved, labored, traded, and worshipped here. The people left, moving north to found new states, or dispersing into smaller communities, but Great Zimbabwe remained, slowly emptying of life until only the stones and legends were left. Now, the site stands not as a ruin of shame, but as a proud testament. Zimbabweans today view it as a source of inspiration, proof that their forebears had civilization and prowess. The silence of Great Zimbabwe at night is not emptiness, but fullness. It is filled with the spirit of a culture that, while changed, is not lost. The Shona people living around still perform ceremonies at nearby sacred sites, and you can sense continuity. As darkness falls, you might recall a line from a visitor long ago who marveled at the marvelous size of these stones with no mortar joining them, or reflect on how for centuries outsiders denied the true makers of this city. But the stones remember, and now we too remember correctly. This was an African city, vibrant and sophisticated. Far out in the southeastern Pacific, over 2,000 miles from the nearest continental land, lies Rapa Nui, Easter Island, a triangular island of volcanic peaks, grasslands, and along the coast, astonishing statues that have captivated the world. These statues, or moai, are monolithic human figures carved from hardened volcanic ash, tough in the island's central quarry of Ranouraku, ranging in height from a few meters to as tall as 10 meters or more. The largest erected moai is about 10 millenniums and over 80 tons. The moai feature oversized heads with brooding expressions, torso up to the hips, and some once wore massive cylindrical top knots of red scoria stone, pukao on their heads. The site of the moai, often lined up on ceremonial platforms called ahu facing inland, is mesmerizing. They stand as stone guardians of an empty island landscape, remnants of a society's devotions and achievements. The Polynesian ancestors of the Rapa Nui arrived on the island around 800–1200 AD. Scholars debate the exact timing, but evidence suggests settlement by around the 12th century and established a thriving culture. Despite extremely limited resources, no permanent streams, limited fresh water, a small variety of plants and animals, they managed to farm sweet potatoes, taro, yams, and raise chickens, and from the ocean they fished. Over time, the population grew, possibly reaching a peak of 7,000–15,000 people by the 15th–17th centuries. They organized into clans, each with its own chief, and these clans were likely in competition, especially in terms of constructing bigger and more moai to honor their ancestors. The moai, it is believed, represented deified ancestors or important chiefs. Raising a moai on an ahu would spiritually watch over and bless the local community. Carving and transporting these giant statues was a Herculean task for a pre-metal Stone Age society. The Rapa Nui used only stone tools, basalt picks called toki, to carve the moai from the quarry face. Then they somehow moved them many kilometers to the coast. The leading theory is that they used a combination of log rollers, sleds, and ropes, or possibly a walking method where they rocked the statues forward with ropes. Both scenarios have tremendous implications. They required timber for rollers or rope tension, rope, which came from plant fibers likely of the hakao tree, and a lot of coordinated manpower, fed by surplus food. All these needs put stress on the environment. Easter Island originally had extensive forests of palm trees, including a now extinct giant palm. Pollen records show that by around 1400 AD, these forests were largely gone. The causes likely included intentional clearing for agriculture, use of wood in moving moai, and also the introduction of Polynesian rats, which may have devoured seeds and prevented regrowth. As tree cover vanished, soil eroded and crop yields would decline. Furthermore, the loss of large trees meant no more seaworthy canoes, thus less fishing. Only small reed skiffs remained. Fresh water sources could have been affected. Less forest means quicker runoff and dry soil. In essence, the Rapa Nui may have overshot their ecosystem's carrying capacity, a scenario often termed ecocide, ecological suicide, in popular narratives, although recent research complicates it by suggesting they showed resilience and farming adaptation, like lithic mulching, using rocks to protect soil. As resources dwindled, internal strife likely increased. The later period of Rapa Nui's pre-contact history is thought to have been marked by clan warfare. Oral traditions speak of bloody conflicts, even cannibalism in times of extreme famine. The Monoi, once standing proudly, were mostly toppled, presumably by rival groups pushing over each other's statues to desecrate and humiliate. And by the time the first recorded European Dutch explorer Jacob Roggeveen arrived on Easter Sunday 1722, hence the name Easter Island, the society he encountered was a shadow of its former self. Roggeveen described the people as subsisting, not thriving. He saw some Monoi still standing and was impressed by them, but also signs of societal decay. In subsequent visits, Spaniards in 1770, Captain Cook in 1774, observers noted that many Monoi were fallen by then. Cook described a people who were impoverished and fewer in number. Thus, long before Europeans enforced any rule, Rapa Nui had suffered a societal collapse. The population crashed. By European contact, it might have been a few thousand. The monuments were abandoned, and the social order, with hereditary chiefs and priests, had given way to survival mode. A new cult, the Tangata Man Nu, or Birdman cult, emerged, focusing not on moai, but an annual competition to collect the first egg of the sooty tern from an offshore islet, reflecting a shift in religion and social structure, perhaps a response to the old system's failure. Then, cruelly, external contact brought further woes. In the 1800s, Peruvian slave raids seized a large portion of the remaining population, and diseases like smallpox and tuberculosis decimated the rest. By 1877, only 111 Rapa Nui people were left alive on the island. They lost much of their culture. The once written script Rongorongo remains undeciphered and was likely a casualty of these upheavals. And yet, the people survived. Today, around 7,000 Rapa Nui, with mixed heritage, live on the island, part of Chile, and they have revived elements of their culture, preserving language, arts, and proudly maintaining the moai for World Heritage and as a link to their ancestors. The moai have been re-erected on summer home for tourism and cultural pride, but many remain where they fell, half buried and gazing at the sky from the ground, as if awaiting some long overdue salvation, or simply witnessing nature's slow healing of the land. To stand on the wind-swept plains of Rapa Nui at dawn, facing a lineup of moai at Ahu Tungariki, 15 moai standing after restoration, is to feel the weight of both the brilliance and folly of the island's history. The moai, backlit by the rising sun, cast long shadows toward you, their faces impassive. They survived the collapse of the society that birthed them, and now outlast the people's sorrows, emblematic of resilience and warning. The endless ocean surrounds the island, a reminder of how isolated the Rapa Nui were. Their world was literally just this bit of earth and stone. When night falls, Rapa Nui's sky is brilliant with stars, no light pollution. The Moai stand in silhouette against the cosmos. It's easy to imagine them as sentinels, guarding the spirits of the ancestors in the darkness. In those quiet hours, one can contemplate what the collapse of Rapa Nui means. It's a story of human determination and ingenuity, but also of vulnerability. The Rapa Nui achieved remarkable feats, yet small mistakes or just sheer bad luck with resources led to calamity. It's a microcosm that has often been taken as a cautionary tale for our entire planet, an island in space. But beyond the caution, there is also hope in the Rapa Nui story. The people did not entirely disappear. They endured, adapted new cultural forms, the Birdman cult, and today strive to restore what was lost. The Moai that fell have been raised again, not to its original religious purpose, but as a testament that the culture lives on, transformed but unbroken. As our journey ends here on Rapa Nui, we find a poignant symmetry. We started with vanished civilizations on the continental mainlands, and ended with one at the far edge of the world. In all these tales, Anasazi, Indus, Olmec, Nabatean, Sea Peoples, Hittite, Aksumite, Minoan, Mycenaean, Göbekli Tepe, Khmer, Cahokian, Noregic, Great Zimbabwean, and Rapa Nui. We have seen that to rise and fall is the common story of civilizations. Yet, in a way, none are ever completely gone. The Anasazi live in the Pueblos of their descendants. The Indus legacy threads into later Indian culture. The Olmecs gave birth to Mesoamerican traditions. The Nabatean city still stands in stone. The Hittites' treaties and laws influence successors. Aksum's conversion left an enduring Ethiopian church. The Minoans and Mycenaeans seeded classical Greece through myth and memory. The builders of Göbekli Tepe sparked perhaps the agricultural revolution. The Khmer's temples still inspire Cambodian identity. The Mississippi mound builders' blood runs in many Native Americans. The Sardinian Noregi may well be ancestors of Sardinia's enduring folkways. Great Zimbabwe's very name is reborn as a modern nation, and the Rapa Nui, though nearly extinguished, continue to sing their ancient songs under the gaze of their moa. In the end, as we let the gentle, immersive quiet of these reflections lull us, we might feel a connection to all those who came before. The stars above Rapa Nui, or above any of these ancient sites, are the same stars that shone on the hopeful beginnings and somber endings of lost civilizations. Under this shared sky, their mysteries invite our curiosity, their achievements command our respect, and their downfalls kindle our humility and caution. Drifting into sleep, we carry with us the dreamlike echoes of vanished foundations, collapsed stones, and last echoes, knowing that through remembering them, in some sense, they live again in our minds.